number 36 of the Standing Committee on Human Resources, Skills and Social Development and the Status of Persons with Disabilities. Today's meeting is taking place in a hybrid format pursuant to the House Order of January 25th, 2021. The proceedings will be made available via the House of Commons website. The webcast will always show the person speaking rather than the entirety of the committee. The committee will now proceed to the consideration of matters related to committee business. I will remind members that we are in public and not in camera. And I will also remind members that we do have a witness coming at 5 p.m., so in about 22 minutes, Romy Bowers, and we were able to secure 90 minutes for her. So I would ask that folks be mindful that we will have her here and that we have a limited amount of time for committee business. And the other thing that some of you are aware of, but not all, is that I will be ceding the chair to Ms. Doncho at or before 5 p.m. as I have some happy personal business to attend to. So I want to thank Ms. Doncho for agreeing to take the chair on my departure. And in terms of committee business, it is my hope that we will be able to deal with two things that were raised previously and one new item, at least by way of reference. So as you may be aware, yesterday, the House referred to the committee Bill C-265 as a private member's bill being referred to committee. It must be reported back to the House 60 sitting days following the date it was referred. We will receive soon, although we haven't yet, a memorandum from our support people at the House of Commons. We will receive a memorandum, as will independents such as Mr. Manley, who's with us here today, with information that will be of assistance to us in consideration of the bill. So that's one thing that we could deal with today, and the other things that were previously before us that we'd like to finalize, if possible, in the next 22 minutes is the budget for the senior study. The question of honoraria and gifts. We have some news on that, and also the matter of the Centennial Flame Research Award. We have some information to get back to you on that. So colleagues, if I may, I'd like to, I'm going to start with a suggestion in connection with 265, and then we can open the floor. Given that any discussion on how we're going to deal with Bill C-265 is likely to take more than the 19 minutes that we now have, it would be my recommendation that we set aside some time for committee business at a future meeting to plan to chart our course with respect to 265 in terms of how many meetings we should set aside, the timing of those meetings, the submission of witness lists, the amount of time allocated for clause by clause, et cetera. I do think that will be a detailed discussion that we're not going to be able to deal with in cursory fashion. So by those are my introductory remarks. I see Madame Chabot, elle a levé sa main. Donc, à vous la parole, Madame Chabot.
Madame Chabot, you have the floor. Hello, Mr. Chair, of course. On this issue of C-265, I would like to draw to our attention that we have to act with as much as diligence as possible so that we can conduct this work before the end of the session. I think that it is a bill that is quite simple and has a large scope, but is actually quite simple in its technical form. 1 or 2 sessions with witnesses would be sufficient. to be able to complete our work with regards to this bill. Thank you, Mrs. Chabot.
Nous n'avons pas beaucoup de...
We don't have that many meetings before June 24th. We will receive the draft report on the reform of EI on June 7th. I understand, and I do completely accept your suggestion. Any other comments on this?
Ms. Doncho, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm fine to discuss what the plan should be for this bill at our next committee for a bit of time, just to more fulsomely debate it. It sounds like we have a lot on the go today and only about 15 more minutes to get it done. So we're happy to have this on the agenda, first step for the next time we have committee business, hopefully at the next meeting.
Okay. Seeing no other hands raised, can we move then to one of the other outstanding items? And we will bring this back before the committee the next time we have committee business. We have witnesses invited for the next two meetings, although I see a to be determined on the Tuesday panel. So if that slot hasn't been filled, we may be able to do something with have three sets of witnesses for one panel and leave some time at the end. That would be one solution, and if not, we'll see what we can do on Thursday, the 3rd of June. Okay, next item, if I could, the budget that you have before you for approval with respect to the study that we are currently undertaking, the impact of COVID-19 on seniors. There was a budget, it's a budget of $4,300, and when we last discussed it, there were a couple of questions posed, one around the possibility of an honoraria and tobacco for Indigenous elders who will be included in the among the witnesses that come before us. So with respect to that, the clerk has done a bit of research and has indicated that there is a policy on the issuance of gifts from the official gift bank, which limits the issuance of gifts to traveling delegations, either traveling committees or a foreign delegation coming before the committee. So that would be contrary to that policy. I would also point out as a matter of interest that this isn't something that is done at the Indigenous Affairs Committee as well. So happy to entertain further discussion on this. If there is none, I would ask that I would ask for a motion that the budget be adopted as presented. Ms. Gazan, please.
Thank you so much, Chair, and thank you for your work and research. I do think, we know that historically, like, the House of Commons is a very colonial institution. And at a time when we're passing bills like Bill C-15, I certainly encourage everybody in this committee, but also encourage all members of the House to really reflect on how sometimes we have to change and shift systems so that they're truly inclusive and culturally relevant, particularly because we have to remember that on the very places all of us sit are on Indigenous lands in this country, and the fact that those are very small gifts considering the benefits of everybody in the circle. I'll leave it at that. I won't have a grand debate, but I do think this is something that really needs to be changed.
Mr. Vaughn, please.
Can I propose that we draft a letter to send to House Affairs Committee to ask for a change in the standing orders and the rules and procedures to allow us to honor Indigenous elders in this way, as it's an established practice and not one of cost really. It's just a question of how we pay for it and execute it. but that we take the lead and suggest that all committees be given permission to honor Indigenous elders as they appear as witnesses, especially when we conduct studies into Indigenous affairs. And that secondly, I'll take it upon the government side to facilitate the presentation of the gifts that honor their presence, and if we could get the addresses of the elders that are being invited, my office will take care of it as a gesture of goodwill towards establishing a new and good practice.
Thank you, Mr. Vaughn. Ms. Gazan, please.
Thank you so much to my colleague, Mr. Vaughn. I really appreciate that offer. And I think particularly as a Human Rights Committee, I think that it would be a really good practice for us to model as a committee. I'll just leave it at that, but thank you very much for that offer. I appreciate that very much.
Ms. Doncho?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I appreciated the feedback from both Mr. Vaughn and Ms. Gazan. I see their points. Mr. Vaughn, I just wanted to confirm, were you saying we should send a letter as a committee to, was it PROC? Or I kind of missed where,
yeah,
and then I have another point.
I think it's PROC, but I think it's Procedural and House Affairs. They're the ones, or is it Internal Economy? I can't remember which one does which.
Which one either, because we were considering getting advice from them as well as a proposal from us. So perhaps the clerk could come back with a suggestion of how we can proceed with getting a further recommendation if we decide as a committee to do a formal letter perhaps. But I think overall, working in Manitoba politics for a number of years, very comfortable and familiar with particularly tobacco gift. I know that that's something that is very, very common in Manitoba. And so I can understand having an elder is a great honor to have their wisdom. And so providing a gift, I can understand that. Our only concern with the, what's the word I'm looking for? The compensation, that's not the right word, but
Honorarium.
Thank you. Honorarium, pardon me. Honorarium is that it may set a precedent for all committees, for all witnesses. And I just think that should be, we should get some further advice on that before we proceed.
It's not so. I mean, the honorarium, I think, is a much more complex question because it does bring into a question of equity. But I think on the honoring of the gift and the symbolism of that, I think is what we can accomplish quickly, and we can then ask House and Proc to or whatever the clerk tells us as to where to send the letter. We'll just draft quick letters suggesting that this become a standard practice for all committees when Indigenous elders are asked to open up or begin meetings.
Or perhaps to ask that they can, provide their expert opinion on how to proceed with that and get their advice, and that we are open to this and would like them to consider it. I think that would be well placed.
I'll bring the letter to the next meeting, and in the interim, if the clerk could forward me the addresses, I'll get the offerings to the elders in question. Do my best to do it. I'm not sure I can do it on Amazon, nor would it be appropriate.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Vaughn. Colleagues, I am now going to cede the floor to cede the chair to Ms. Doncho and head off to my other engagement. Thank you for your indulgence, and have a wonderful and productive meeting. Take care. And thank you, Ms. Doncho, and good luck.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you very much. So I just wanted to defer to the clerk. We have a few more minutes before 4 o'clock hits, so we could discuss the Centennial Flame Award, if that's procedurally fine, before we do the sound check for Ms. Bowers. Okay, we'll just go into that. So since we have a few minutes, why don't we talk about the Centennial Flame Award, just settle that and we can get that out of the way. So just to recap, last time we sort of had a discussion about $5,500 and we were looking to have a date, I believe June 16th. Now that looks like it's coming up pretty quick. So just open it up for discussion, Mr. Vaughn.
My hand hadn't come down.
Oh, okay. Madame Chabot.
Merci. Thank you, Mrs. Doncho. I agree with the latest discussions that we've had with regards to the $5,500. I think that we can go ahead.
Okay, so just to confirm, Madame Chabot, sorry, I didn't have my translation on. You're good with $5,500. That's fine from your perspective? Yes, okay. Go ahead, Mr. Vaughn.
Yeah, I've been on this committee now, I guess, for around, I think this particular scholarship. It's stated this amount, even though the dollar amount from the fountain seems to be going up. I guess as you got rid of pennies, loonies started to appear. People wanted more luck from the Centennial Flame. I think it might be time to revisit that dollar amount and peg it a little higher so that it helps the people who are doing the work they're doing. And I would propose that we boost the amount to 7,500 going forward, based on the fund and the way it's grown over the last 5 years. There's ample dollars in the account, and accruing a larger and larger account isn't helping students. The other alternative would be to have a pair of recipients, but we only tend to get 5 or 6 real applications. So I would suggest a higher amount for an individual may be a way of going.
Mr. Vaughn, Ms. Falk.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to bring up the fact that last year and this year, we're not really going to see tourism, especially this summer, especially within the pandemic. So I'm wondering if maybe not this year, but maybe in the future. It would just be unfortunate if we do raise it and then we end up depleting the account, depending how tourism comes back. I mean, that's going to depend also on individual provinces and who can travel and that type of thing. So I would just be a little bit more cautious of jumping the gun during a pandemic and increasing the amount. But that's just my opinion.
Thank you, Ms. Falk. Madame Chabot.
So I was saying that I would agree with maintaining the amount, but Mr. Vaughn, if he's saying that we do have the ability to increase the amount, we know that it can require. And so if we have the ability to increase it, I think that when we look at all the work that is done, in the end, I'm saying that I'm quite open to increasing the amount. I don't think an extra $2,000 is too much. So if we're able to do that, I'm open to that suggestion.
Thank you, Madame Chabot. Mr. Tucker, Mr. Long. I think you were first. Pardon
me. Thank you, Madam Chair. I do agree that we should increase the amount. I've been on HUMA now for 6 years, and the amount has not moved. And the fact that there is, and I apologize, the number that's in the account right now, $24,000 or what have you. So it doesn't have to be 7,500, but I think an increase is in order. So maybe it's 6,500 or 7,000, whatever the committee feels appropriate. But I certainly am in favor of bumping that up a bit. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Long. Mr. Tucker.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. And to the committee, I would disagree with increasing it this year. It's definitely going to need to be increased as inflation gets uncontrollably high in Canada in the years to come. So I would wait to see how that goes, and on the revenue side, on if tourism comes back. So I would be much more comfortable on a cautious approach of waiting to see where the next year goes.
Thank you, Mr. Tucker. Ms. Gazan.
I would agree with the amount being increased. And although I know that things are tough during COVID financially for everybody, I think that's more of a reason to increase it, particularly because, we know getting employment right now is really difficult. And so I actually feel like it's more of a reason and need to increase it right now in the difficult economic times we're in.
Thank you, Ms. Gazan. I believe Mr. Vaughn was next. Mr. Long, your hand's still up, but I think it's just up from last time. Okay, Mr. Vaughn, go ahead, and then Ms. Young, and then Mr. Tucker.
Just a question to the clerks or to the support staff. The dollar amounts have been increasing every year for the last few years. In fact, the reserve has been growing faster than what is the trajectory that it's on, and where are we in terms of the surplus, and how much has it been growing annually for the last couple of years?
Thank you, Mr. Vaughn. Excellent questions. I believe I'll let the clerk give the definitive answer, but it's about just over 27,000 is what's in there now.
Yes, you are correct, Madam Chair. It is, let me take a look at it directly. It is $26,747 right now in the account. It is dependent upon the contributions from those who contribute to the fountain, as well as to donations itself. The last, in 2016, 2017, and 2018, the award amount was $5,500. There was no award distributed in 2019 or 2020, but the amount can be decided by the committee, and it's allowed one award per year.
And sorry, and what was the annual collection from the fountain on a year-by-year basis?
I can actually go back. If you look in 2020, the total amount that was deposited was $2,226. If the committee wants, I can go back and look at old account documents about this. I can usually get annual amounts, but right now I only have the amount for 2020, which is $2,262.
Madam Clerk, could you provide the 2019 so that we know what it would be like in a normal?
I could come back to the committee with that information, yes.
Yeah, because my understanding was that we were collecting more, and obviously COVID and construction as well has pushed people away from the fountain, and it was closed for a period of time as it was rebuilt. But I think my understanding and my recollection was we were collecting more in coins than we were giving out, and that was why the remodeling made sense.
Thank you, Mr. Vaughn. Ms. Young.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to mention that it doesn't mean that if we increase the amount that we have to increase it every year. Could we not every year look at how much is available and decide how much we're going to give out that year? That's one idea. And certainly I think it speaks to the fact that most people don't know where that money goes. And we need to promote the program and tell people that this is how we're using the money. And I think that maybe we would get more. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Young. Mr. Vaughn, did you have your hand up still? Or no, you're good. So it sounds like from a general consensus, sounds like overall, it sounds like most seem okay with increasing at least even a modest sum. And as Ms. Young pointed out, we could decrease it if we find that in 2021, there were no donations or 2,000 or less, and it's not sustainable, which is of course our goal in this. So I know that there's not full agreement, but if we have consensus to increase it, would say to a modest amount, then I think if that's all right with everybody, I'm not sure. I'm just going to look at all the faces here. I see thumbs up. Mr. Tucker, you're okay with the modest increase? So. Okay. So we would need, we also need to pick the day for the deadline of submission. But before we get to that, we can just finalize the amount. We may need, Madam Clerk, I believe we may need a motion. Are we good with we don't have a full consensus though. So Madam Clerk, if you wouldn't mind chiming in.
The committee can move a motion in terms of the quantity for the award amount. The last meeting, it recommended 5,500. It was proposed. The committee can change the number of that and a date. Right now, the last meeting we agreed upon, there was a discussion regarding June 15th for applicants to submit their applications. The committee can choose a later date, providing possible applicants additional time. It could be a date sometime in the summer. It's really up to the committee. But a motion just to adopt for the amount and the deadline.
Okay, so it may take a little bit more work than today, and we're about out of time, and Ms. Bowers is here, and she wasn't able to provide 2 hours, but she's here for 90 minutes. So, but Mr. Vaughn, go right ahead.
I was going to suggest as a compromise, since it's the Centennial Flame, if we made the amount $6,700, it would be numerically apropos and would land in the middle and would hopefully put us on a sustainable base going forward. And then just as the date, you could make the date July 1st to line up with Canada Day, and that would allow people to submit in advance of July 1st. And that would make everything poetically, symbolically tied together.
Sounds like a nice idea. I know we don't quite have consensus yet. So if everyone is comfortable, if we can revisit when we revisit the letter we discussed, Mr. Vaughn, next time, I think that might be best. We could settle on that. And then the clerk just let me know that we do have to sort of pass that budget for the senior study as well. And since we've kind of discussed what we're going to do with a possible letter and referring to PROC, is there a consensus for I believe it's 4,600 for the senior studies? Everyone comfortable with that? Everyone looks good? Okay. All right. So we'll now proceed to consideration of, pardon me. Here we go. Thank you, Madam Clerk, for these trusty notes. So we're going to go on to, we'll suspend for a few minutes and then prepare the witness, make sure she's got her sound checked and everything. So we'll just suspend for 2 minutes. With an opening statement followed by questions. So Ms. Bowers, over to you.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you to the chair. And before I begin, I'd like to acknowledge that I'm joining the committee today from Toronto, which is the traditional territory of many First Nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples. I'm very pleased to meet with the committee today in my new capacity as President and Chief Executive Officer of the Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation. As many of you may know, I was appointed to this position effective April 6th, succeeding our former President and CEO, Evan Siddall. Prior to this, I served in a number of other capacities at CMHC, first as Chief Risk Officer when I joined the company in 2015, and more recently as Senior Vice President of Client Solutions. And like everybody at CMHC, I'm motivated by our aspiration that by 2030, everyone in Canada has a home that they can afford and that meets their needs. Housing affordability is compelling for me personally because I believe that it is essential for our nation, for creating a Canada that is truly equitable and a place where every person can fulfill their potential and prosper. Our aspiration has never been more relevant than it is today. Housing affordability is a top concern for Canadians, heightened in no smart part by the COVID-19 pandemic and the new awareness that it's created among us of the sanctuary of a home. We see that house prices continue to rise in major centers across the country, and young households are taking on more and more debt. And this represents a substantial threat to Canada's financial stability in the event that interest rates or unemployment levels begin to increase significantly. The current environment is also accentuating the economic divide between those who can afford to purchase a home and those who cannot. At CMHC, our work to improve affordability is supported in part by the National Housing Strategy, a 10-year, $70 billion plan to give more Canadians a place to call home. Les programmes de la Stratégie nationale sur le logement.
National Housing Strategy programs generally focus on those Canadians who are most vulnerable, such as seniors, people with disabilities, women and children fleeing violence, and people from Indigenous and other racialized groups. They also focus on addressing the biggest challenge to affordability, which is the lack of housing supply. Core NHS programs support projects that build new rental homes and renovate existing ones.
Investments in affordable housing have been growing year by year, including in Budget 2020, which proposes to invest $2.5 billion in new funding for housing. The budget also proposes to reallocate $1.3 billion in existing funding to help build, repair, and support 35,000 existing housing units sooner than planned. All of this new and accelerated funding will be delivered by CMHC. Of particular note, the government is expanding its investment in the highly successful Rapid Housing Initiative, or RHI. As the committee may know, the RHI was introduced last fall with federal funding of $1 billion to quickly create affordable housing for vulnerable people who have been most affected by the pandemic. At the same time, the goal was also to stimulate the economy, creating good jobs when they're needed most. The initiative provided funding to cover the construction of modular housing, including land acquisition. It also supported projects to convert existing buildings to affordable housing. Cities, provinces, nonprofit organizations, Indigenous organizations, and governing bodies were eligible to apply for the RHI funding. Most importantly, all housing had to be created within a year of the signing the funding agreement. The results for RHI exceeded all expectations. The original goal of the program was to create 3,000 units of permanent affordable housing. By working with partners and communities across the country, we were able to sign agreements that will create some 4,700 units. We also received many excellent proposals that far exceeded the initial budget. Due to the success of this approach and the high level of interest and capacity to do more, the government included an additional $1.5 billion for the RHI in Budget 2021. This new investment should create another 4,500 units of housing. I'm also pleased to note that 25% of this new funding has been allocated for projects for women who have sadly been disproportionately impacted by the pandemic. Further details about the RHI will be announced shortly, together with other budget measures and ongoing programs. It's going to be a very busy year for CMHC. Nevertheless, I have every confidence in the ability of our 2,200 employees across the country to deliver on the government's expectations with respect to the National Housing Strategy. I also wanted to note that CMHC will also continue to deliver our commercial programs, which will enable CMHC to support our mandate to support financial stability. Through our mortgage funding programs, we make low-cost funding available to financial institutions to support their lending activities. Our mortgage insurance products, on the other hand, have enabled qualified home buyers and developers to access financing at very competitive interest rates. Last year, our mortgage insurance products helped more than 94,000 households purchase homes across Canada and supported the construction of more than 174 new homes in multi-unit projects. We will continue to monitor the state of the housing markets across the country to identify signs of potential vulnerabilities. We are also partnering with other stakeholders on research and data collection and analysis to explore innovative solutions to the complex challenges facing Canada's housing system. I would also note that CMHC has begun to implement a company-wide strategy to become a climate change leader. And we are accelerating our efforts to meet our anti-racism and equity commitments. This is not only integral to our 2030 aspiration, but is of great importance to me personally as a person of Asian heritage. As for my new role, I'm taking time to meet with our board of directors, management team, employees, affordable housing providers, private developers, the nonprofit sector, industry associations, bank CEOs, government partners, and Indigenous organizations, to list just a few. I have been seeking their insights on their vision for CMHC and the role that we should play in the housing system going forward. And I'm sort of calling this my listening tour, and it's been a very productive time so far in listening to many ideas about that people have regarding the future of CMHC. My own thinking is that there will never be sufficient funding at the federal level to reach our aspiration for housing affordability for everybody in Canada, whether they choose to rent or own. While the National Housing Strategy provides a very significant investment, a bigger and broader effort is needed. Housing is very complex and is not solely a federal responsibility. In fact, most housing in Canada is provided by the private sector. Having said that, there is a huge opportunity for CMHC to foster greater collaboration between partners to address affordability challenges. CMHC can use our influence and expertise to identify, highlight, and address the barriers to housing affordability. On my listening tour, many people have emphasized that the value CMHC brings to housing is the combination of our policy and market expertise, our ability to deliver national housing programs, and our knowledge of the housing markets through our mortgage insurance, mortgage funding, and market analysis programs. I believe these strengths and our unique mix of publicly funded and commercial programs position us to harness the power of the private and nonprofit sectors to achieve the results we seek. Results that we believe will ultimately benefit all Canadians. Chair, I would like to thank you again for the opportunity to meet with the committee today, and I'd be very happy to take any questions at this time. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Bowers, for your opening remarks. So we'll go on to questions now. First up is the Conservatives with Mr. Viss for 6 minutes.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Ms. Bowers, for appearing today, and congratulations on your new role. You packed a lot into your opening 8 minutes, and I don't think I'll be able to cover everything I want to talk today, so I'm just going to jump right to it. One of the most common questions I get living in the Fraser Valley from regular Canadians is on foreign buyers' effect on the real estate market. Recently, we heard from Mr. Vaughan that sometimes our system works better for foreign investors than Canadians. What data is CMHC collecting right now on foreign buyers? Does CMHC backstop the mortgages of foreign buyers? And in 2016, 2017, there was CMHC data which outlined in Burnaby, for example, or in Metro Vancouver, that 1 in 5 buyers of condos were in fact foreign buyers. What does that look like today? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'd like to thank Mr. Viss for his warm words of congratulation and thank him for his questions as well. On the subject of foreign buyers, CMHC does collect the information on this through our rental surveys. We can provide you access to our rental surveys after this meeting. With respect to just the topic of foreign buyers, I believe that there were actions in the recent budget to address this issue. Of course, CMHC monitors this issue. However, we don't think that this is the most critical issue affecting housing affordability in Canada today. We believe that the issues that are giving rise to house price escalation in the markets today are driven by supply factors. For a number of years, and this predates the pandemic, the pace of housing supply creation has not kept pace with demand. And from our perspective, that is the single most important factor that has contributed to escalating housing prices. So our recommendation to the committee and to Canadians at large, and this was outlined in a 2018 paper that our housing economists provided, is to put focus on the barriers to housing supply. And again, this is a complex issue that involves action by many levels of government, but it's our view that, of course, it's important to track.
Thank you, Ms. Bowers.
Okay, thank you.
No, that was, I would agree with you in my assessment, and from what I've been hearing from experts too, that supply is the number one factor related to affordability in Canada. So if you, you mentioned in your opening remarks that the federal government can work more closely with other levels of government to address the supply challenges we're facing. Can you give some concrete examples of what we could be doing better at the federal level to get more supply built?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Viz. When you look at the National Housing Strategy, there's a number of programs under the National Housing Strategy, and most are supply-based programs. There are a number of programs that we have in place that promote the creation of supply. So I think the tools are there at the federal level to create supply, especially supply directed towards the most vulnerable elements of our society. But when you look at the housing market as a whole, most housing in Canada is provided by the private sector. And what prevents supply from being created, especially in our large cities, is things like the development life cycle, zoning, permissions at the municipal level, NIMBYism in many neighborhoods that prevent dense housing from being created. So
thank you. And just on that point, on municipal bylaw processes, could the federal government play a role incentivizing municipalities to get through that backlog, to adopt policies that are more inclusive, that allow for densification where we need it, to get more housing built? Can the federal government play a role there, in your opinion?
Yes, I think that would be something that is definitely worth pursuing. Ultimately, the decision is at the local level, but I think there is merit at the federal level in thinking about what type of incentives we could create to create alignment at the municipal level.
That's very helpful. Earlier in your remarks, you touched upon the budget line item regarding the 1% non-residents tax. I don't think I got that completely right, but you know what I'm referring to. In CMHC's market analysis division, have they done a study of the impact of the proposed 1% non-resident tax and the impact it would have on the Canadian housing market?
No, we have not.
Would CMHC be open to doing an analysis on the 1% tax?
I have to point out, Mr. Chair, that it's anything related to tax regulation is the responsibility of the Department of Finance. So it may be better to direct this question to the officials there.
Okay, duly noted. So in my neighborhood and where you live in Toronto.
Wait, your time is up. I apologize.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
And so now on to the Liberals with Mr. Dong. Right ahead.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and you're doing a great job, by the way. And I also want to offer my congratulations to Ms. Bowers. Thank you very much for the presentation. With the release of the National Housing Strategy in 2017, CMHC has become increasingly involved in the financing of affordable housing, with the aspiration that by 2030, I quote, by 2030, everyone in Canada has a home that they can afford and that meets their needs. And in your opening remarks, you mentioned a bit for the inclusion of the not-for-profit sector. I'm a big fan for co-ops and also not-for-profit senior residents. Could you talk a bit more about not-for-profit accessing capital under CMHC?
Thank you, Madam Chair, for the question. And again, I'd like to thank MP Bong for his warm words of congratulations. In terms of the National Housing Strategy, when you look at perhaps what is the flagship program within the National Housing Strategy, that's the National Housing Co-Investment Fund. And that's a program that provides financing primarily to the nonprofit sector to promote the creation and repair of affordable housing. we have had great success in the take up of that. The program is it's a 10-year program. We're about 3 years in, and we're in terms of we're exceeding our annual targets every year in terms of supporting the financing of affordable housing by many nonprofit organizations across Canada.
I've had, thank you very much for that. I've had conversation with not-for-profit stakeholders in the long-term care or senior home sector. Their feedback is that they feel that the restrictions on them to getting loans from CMHC pose a great challenge and sometimes put them in a great disadvantage compared to for-profit sectors. It's not a criticism. It's nor merely is a suggestion. I was just giving you an observation. Are you confident that CMHC will provide more opportunities to these not-for-profit sector to access low interest rate loans from CMHC?
Thank you, Madam Chair, for that question. And there's no doubt that there's more that CMHC can do to improve our client service and ensure that our nonprofit clients have access to the NHS programs. I welcome any type of feedback that you may have from your constituents, and we can look into that definitely in terms of things we can do to improve. With respect to the National Housing Co-Investment Fund, for example, we have taken many of the criticisms about the delivery of the program that we received in the early years, and we have acted on them. And we are very pleased to say that we have reduced our turnaround times by about 50% over the past year. Long-term care is a very specific challenge because, as you know, the CMHC's mandate is to finance housing, and long-term care often involves a housing-related component, but also facilities that are more linked to let's call healthcare. And it's possible to use our national housing strategy programs for that, but we have to, in cases like long-term care, we have to involve often provincial health authorities in looking at the various aspects of the services that are provided in those facilities, right. And that creates complexity. And I don't know, maybe perhaps your constituents are referring to that level of
I appreciate the difference between the health sector and national housing strategy. What I like to see is overlap of public policies as opposed to creating gaps between public policy. So yes, they fall under the purview of healthcare. However, at the end of the day, we're talking about dwellings for seniors, and they live there, right? So with additional support, I'm talking about creating more units that will be able to house more seniors. That's how I see it. You've mentioned that housing affordability for all by 2030 is a key goal. What are the greatest challenges that you face in pursuing that goal?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, for that question. I think you asked that question at a very interesting time. I think that our 2030 goal was challenging prior to the pandemic. I think the challenges are greater now. I think the pandemic has had a disproportionate impact, as I said in my opening comments, on the most vulnerable in our society. When you look at how the pandemic has impacted Canadians, homeowners have done better in some cases economically than renters and people who are our most essential workers who are in the lower levels of our income distribution. And I think post-pandemic, there's a great opportunity to, I think the slogan is Build Back Better, to really address some of the socioeconomic divides that exist within society and make the necessary investments so that Canada is truly equitable and see, I think the COVID crisis has exposed some of the inequities and inequalities in our society, but I view that this is a great opportunity to address those going forward, and housing is a key component of that.
Thank you, Ms. Bowers. Thank you, Mr. Zhang.
Thank you.
Now we will go to the NDP with, the block with Mr. Trudel.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you, Mrs. Bowers, for being here. And congratulations on your appointment. That's very important. As you were saying, the CMHC plays an important, a crucial role, especially during this pandemic, and will help us to get out of this crisis. And in your introductory statement, you talked about the program launched in October, the Rapid Housing Initiative, but I'd like to talk about the sums. In the beginning, we had 500 million. In Quebec, we received 63 million, 12.8% of this amount. Second step, we received 116 million. A few projects were accepted. Well, one was accepted in the north for the Cree Nation. We're 23% of the population in Quebec, and we are not receiving our share of all the sums, 1 billion, to this program. So is this part of the issues when you're trying to decide on the distribution of money? Are you looking at the demographic weight? For example, Quebec is 23%.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, for that question. And I'd like to thank MP Trudel for his kind words of congratulations. And just in terms of the first round of the RHI, Quebec, the province of Quebec, including all the projects, received approximately 18% of the funding. And when you look at how we distributed the funding, there was $1 billion in funding available. There was 500 million of that was provided for the major cities. So that's how we identified the major cities, and we looked at the level of severe housing need that existed in those cities, as well as the counts of homelessness. And we based our allocation of the 500 million based on those statistics. On the other 500 million, that was under what was called the project stream. Quebec received a special allocation, but when you're thinking about our methodology, it was for projects other than the province of Quebec. It was based on the merits of the strength of the various projects that came in.
Maybe we don't have the same figures. In the first, according to my calculation, Montreal received money, Quebec 63 million. I have 12.8% when I look at this, but there still is a shortfall because a lot of people table different projects. The housing needs are crying. We have 40,000 families waiting for low-cost housing. A lot of people proposed projects, and these projects were declined. And so for about 25 years, the federal government has have given up on housing. In Quebec, we have had programs. For example, the Accès Logis program, we had a type of social and community approach that's lauded throughout Canada. I see Mr. Vaughan that's on the committee, and we've already discussed this, but it's almost as if the approach that gives results in Quebec it's almost as if we're being punished in the way that CMHC is distributing sums. What do you have to say to this?
Thank you very much for this question, Madam Chair. And just as a general comment, I'd like to just make the point that the demand for the RHI funding exceeded the amount of funding that was available. We received almost in excess of $3.5 billion worth of applications for 500 million that was available. So it is true that we were unfortunately we had to put many very worthy applications on hold, and and I think that this many of perhaps the constituents who are speaking to MP Trudel were many of the applicants that we were unfortunately not able to fund. The good news is that in the new budget, we do have a $1.5 billion in additional funding available, and we're in the process of determining how those funds will be allocated. We haven't finished our work on that, but we'll be very pleased to share our approach and methodology and how we can advance the additional funding that we have received in the coming weeks.
Oui, ça c'est intéressant. Merci, Madame.
Thank you. When we launched the program in October, we were giving up until December 31st to apply, and then organizations working were told you'll receive an answer by January 31st. I had organizations in Montérégie that had offers, and on March 31st, they still had no answer. I'm sure that you've received a lot of applications, but how can you launch such a program so quickly and not be able to provide answers to organizations? I'm talking about people working with homeless people, with women, and these delays made it so that some projects just fell apart. Will this be changed for the second part?
Very brief answer, Ms. Bowers.
Yes, thank you very much, Madam Chair, for that question. Yes, we are. We like to think ourselves as a learning organization, so we have taken all these comments into account, and we will try our best to make improvements in the second round to address these issues going forward. Thank you for the comments.
Thank you, Ms. Bowers. Merci, Monsieur Trudel. It's now over to the NDP, to Ms. Gazan for 6 minutes.
Thank you so much, Chair, and you're doing a great job today. And congratulations to Madame Bowers on your new post. I just want to build on my colleague MP Dong's comments in regards to the rental construction funding initiative and how it benefited, for the most part, the for-profit sector. And in fact, to the point where 90% of the agreements were for the for-profit sector, and I will be following up with the nonprofit sector in my riding to get recommendations to you as soon as possible. Many who felt really left out from the program. It was also criticized, that particular program, about the whole definition of affordability. For example, in Ottawa, $2,750 would meet this definition of affordable. And the report highlights projects that were considered affordable, but were well above the average market rent. This is certainly an issue in the city of Winnipeg and my riding. When the government says over 1 million Canadians help to find affordable housing, does this include the units that meet the RCFI's definition of affordable, which I would argue is not affordable for many?
Thank you, Madam Chair, for the question. And I'd like to thank MP Gazan for your kind words of congratulations. With respect to the RCFI program specifically, I always like to think of the National Housing Strategy as a very broad tent. The housing continuum is very broad. And although most of the programs are focused on more deeply affordable housing, we do want to include programs that support the rental sector. For many years, there has not been the growth in purpose-built rental in Canada, and the RCFI program was developed specifically to provide new rental housing for middle-class Canadians versus the people at lower income levels. And I know when you're actually looking at the rents that are being charged for RCFI projects, it's important not to compare the rents not to the market in general, but the rents for new buildings that are being constructed. We are pleased with the RCFI program because it generates new units in rental that's very much needed, and we are able to drive greater affordability.
Yeah. Unfortunately, with all due respect, it's really left a lot of people in my riding really behind the third poorest riding in the country. And building on that, you spoke about historically marginalized groups. Certainly, we that was highlighted in the National Inquiry into Murdered and Missing Indigenous Women and Girls. In fact, a report by the Native Women's Association of Canada described First Nations women living off reserve experience, in quotes, gendered and racialized discrimination by potential property owners which affects their ability to find adequate housing. Talking about people who fall outside of the definition of the middle class, I'm still trying to figure out what that is now, with all due respect. My question is, with this in mind, how is the CMHC responding to the calls to justice of the National Inquiry into Murdered and Missing Indigenous Women and Girls? For example, calls for the establishment of long-term sustainable funding of Indigenous-led low-barrier shelters, safe spaces, transition homes, second stage housing and services for Indigenous women, girls, to us LGBTQIA people.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for that question. At CMHC, we have a group that is responsible for delivering housing programs to Indigenous communities and Canadians who live in the North. And there are probably about 70 people in that group, and their sole objective is to make sure that all the programs under the National Housing Strategy are available to Indigenous Canadians. So we work very hard every day with organizations that serve Indigenous Canadians to ensure that the federal housing programs that exist are made available to them. I was very pleased to see in the recent budget that the commitment, for example, that 25% of the new RHI funding that's available will be dedicated to women and children fleeing violence.
Yeah, just to build on that, just because I have a limited amount of time, noting in Winnipeg that we have the highest number of Indigenous people and Indigenous families in core housing need in the country, I would say that that amount needs to be increased substantially to really lift up this basic human right. Just going back to your CMHC biography, it stated in quotes that you stated this, you believe that CMHC can be a catalyst for solving housing affordability challenges and a leader in building a housing system that is equitable and free of systemic racism. We know there's a lot of discussion about systemic racism, but in order to get out of systemic racism, it's important to identify and know how structures and current systems perpetuate the ongoing colonization and racism in
Madam
order
Kazan,
to change.
If you would ask a question, your time is up, and then a brief answer, please.
Sure. Change these systems. Can you speak to how the CMHC has and does continue to participate in acts of systemic racism?
So thank you very much for that question. And one of the privileges that I've had at working at CMHC is that I've had the opportunity to serve many Indigenous communities. And I recognize that in delivering federal government programs, there's systemic racism built into some of the assumptions we have in how we set our criteria and develop programs. So this is something that we've taken to heart at CMHC. We believe that reconciliation is at the heart of what we do. So we recognize that sometimes unconscious biases in how we operate as a federal crown corporation can be acts of systemic racism. So we have a mandatory training program at CMHC for all employees to learn about Indigenous culture and history, to ensure that when we deliver and design programs that we take into consideration.
Perhaps you can consider in the next
okay, fair enough.
next round.
Thank you for letting me indulge Ms. Dancho.
No problem. All right, so we're going to go back to the Conservatives for the second round, and so over to you, Mr. Viss.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ms. Bowers, do you believe in the last year that the 2030 goal of CMHC is being closer to being achieved or further away from being achieved?
So as I stated, I think the pandemic has created a situation where there is a greater divide between the haves and have-nots. So
we're unfortunately, because of the pandemic and the extra spending and low interest rates, that the country has become less affordable.
less support. However, at the same time, I think there is a public mood where we actually see these inequalities, and I think there is a huge public support to making the necessary investments to make sure that the gap between the haves and the have-nots are closed. So I'm very optimistic that post-pandemic, there is a great opportunity to make investments.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Many Canadians cannot afford the 20% down payment required for an uninsured mortgage and are required to pay for mortgage insurance through CMHC. Recently, CMHC provided a $3.5 billion dividend payment to the Government of Canada. Why is CMHC paying into the federal government general revenue fund instead of reducing insurance rates or offering rebates to the lower income Canadians that are just getting into the housing market in this crazy time?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, for that question. I'd like to just point out that the mortgage insurance system that exists in Canada is something that is a legislative requirement. CMHC and 2 other private companies provide mortgage insurance, and it's, as you know, it's a legislative requirement for people who don't have a 20% requirement, 20% deposit on their houses to purchase the mortgage insurance.
Thank you, Ms. Bowers. Mayor Hurley, the chair of the Metro Vancouver Housing Committee, shared with me yesterday that his city has 9 shovel-ready housing sites, 6 for the National Housing Co-Investment Fund and 3 for the Rapid Housing Initiative, none of which receive funding for construction. Why has CMHC ignored Burnaby? It's one of the most expensive places to live in Canada.
Fair enough. Thank you very much, Madam Chair, for that question. So with respect to Burnaby, as I mentioned, for the 3 RHI projects, we're still waiting. We just received the $1.5 billion in housing. There's a number of projects that are on
I'm
hold.
I'm going to give my plug for the mayor of Burnaby today that they need more from CMHC in that community. I was shocked that they did not have anything yet except for funding under the rental construction financing initiative. Burnaby needs support. And on Burnaby, the mayor told me that his staff had to fill out 250 pages of paperwork to receive seed funding of $50,000 per project for 3 projects. That's 750 pages for $150,000. You mentioned earlier that the application processing time has been reduced. Has there been any action on reducing the administrative burden of applying for funds under the co-investment fund?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, for that question. Yes, as I mentioned previously, we have been working very assiduously with our proponents to reduce the administrative burden. We have a fantastic group in BC who are there working with proponents in Burnaby to make their applications reality. Burnaby has been successful in receiving seed funding for those projects, and I've just received an update that with respect to the co-investment projects in line, what's happening is co-investment requires investments from other levels of government.
I'm going to have to jump to one final question, but I think I made my point there. The government responses to my order paper questions on the Rapid Housing Initiative have been distributed to all members of the committee. Unfortunately, very little useful data was actually provided. The majority of the information was redacted. I would ask that CMHC provide the unredacted versions of these documents to the committees. And to that point, I will move the following motion. That CMHC provide the committee with the complete and unredacted versions of order paper questions 244 and 420 within 10 business days. Thank you, Madam Chair. And I bring that to the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Viss, for your motion. I would just ask that you perhaps email it to the clerk as soon as you can so that it can be distributed to everyone.
All of the order paper questions were distributed to everyone on the...
I meant your motion. Sorry, your motion.
Okay,
if possible.
I will do so right away. And thank you, Ms. Bowers, for appearing today, and I appreciated the discussion.
Okay. Oh, and I see it now. Great. Madam Clerk, may I just ask for your feedback if she has a moment? I see she's not looking at us right now, but Madam Clerk, if you would mind just letting us know, do we have to debate the motion now or we're just putting it on the floor? I just want to confirm to make sure I'm following procedure.
Mr. Viss did move the motion, so it is on the floor right now.
Okay, so we can move forward then. Mr. Turnbull.
I would just request, if possible, we could have the motion in both official languages.
Yes, I believe we've been doing that. So, Mr. Viss, I'll empower you to provide that or work with the clerk to do so. Ms. Volk.
Translate it right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Volk.
Just wondering, are we debating the motion right now? Is that the step we're at, or are we just waiting till everybody receives the motion?
No, just confirmed with the clerk that Mr. Viss did not move the motion. You just put it forward. So it's put forward now, but we're not debating it. Correct, Madam Clerk? Yes. Okay. I see you nodding. Madame Chabot, s'il vous plaît.
Merci, Madame Dancho. Madame la...
Thank you, Madam Dancho, Madam Chair. You just answered my question. I don't think it should be debated right now. We understand that it was presented, and we'll continue our work and allow the witness to speak.
Madame Chabot, merci. Mr. Turnbull.
Oh, I think I left my hand up from before, but I do have just an additional comment. I noticed that my colleague, Mr. Viss, said he was just undertaking the translation.
Sorry, it was already sent. My apologies, Mr. Turnbull.
Yeah, okay, thanks. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure because I think the standing orders require the translation bureau to do the translation. So I just wanted to make sure that we were following that. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Turnbull. We'll ensure that all the motions put forward moving forward are done.
Madam Chair, when I submitted the motion, I forgot that I did it earlier, and I did the motion automatically in both official languages.
Okay.
So that was sent. Thank you.
You speak French. Okay, thank you, Mr. Viss. I think we can move on now to questions again. So we are going to go to the Liberals for 5 minutes with Ms. Young.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and thank you, Ms. Bowers, for appearing today. I was thinking that I'm sure taking over the CMHC during a pandemic can't be easy, but you're obviously the right person for the job. So thank you very much for appearing today. I wanted to continue or pick up from what MP Viss had questioned you on, and you were just starting to talk about how optimistic you are about the future. And I wanted to give you an opportunity to just express what your thoughts are about where we're going and the optimism that you see.
Thank you very much for that question, Madam Chair. And first of all, I think there's two aspects to my optimism, if I could say. One is CMHC is a great Canadian institution. When I'm very blessed to be surrounded by employees who are just committed to doing their best to serve Canadians. And we have employees who are distributed across the country, and their jobs are to help proponents have access to very important federal funding that supports the development of affordable housing across the country. So it's a privilege for me to be leading such a dedicated workforce, and that is one source of optimism. Another source of optimism was, I think when I think about the National Housing Strategy, the $70 billion commitment is a significant commitment. Our CMHC, as an organization, we're focused on delivering on that. I think there were some hiccups in the early years in terms of delivery, but I feel that we have the great ability to deliver on the government programs. I have great confidence that we received, over $3 billion in funding through the most recent budget, and I feel confident that we can deliver that quickly, and that investment will have very meaningful impact on the lives of many Canadians, especially those who are most vulnerable. I mentioned the top up to the rapid housing strategy, which is fantastic, but we also have an opportunity to bring forward funding for the co-investment program, which will be great. And in addition to that, there was a theme about helping women and children. And I'm particularly pleased that there was $300 million in additional funding for the Canada Housing Benefit, particularly targeting women who are and children who are fleeing family violence. I think there's a lot of good we can do with the program. In addition to that, I think probably the biggest funding aspect of the most recent budget is $4.4 billion in energy retrofits for homeowners. And we at CMHC, we're very committed to climate change, and we recognize that housing stock is a very big emitter of greenhouse gas emissions. So the opportunity, we feel very blessed that the government has entrusted us to deliver on this very important program to address greenhouse gas emissions in the housing sector. And we're very, very pleased to deliver on that as well.
Oh, thank you very much for that. There is a lot there to unpack, and I particularly am pleased to hear about the 25% for the rapid housing going to women and children. That is obviously most needed. I did want to mention also that this committee just finished a study on Indigenous housing, urban, rural, and northern housing. And the recommendation is a standalone organization run by Indigenous for Indigenous. Just wanted to get your thoughts on the recommendations that we've put forward, if you've had a chance to see them at this point.
Yeah. Thank you, Madam Chair, for that question. I haven't had a chance to look at the recommendations in great detail, but I have taken a high-level overview of them. Obviously, we wait for the response by the government in terms of how we would respond to the recommendations. In the event that CMHC is responsible for any of these sort of the action plans, we're ready to support any type of implementation. As I mentioned, reconciliation is a key aspect of our strategy and mandate. We have employees who are very committed to the concept of housing by the Indigenous for Indigenous, and we believe that some of the values that we espouse as a Crown corporation are very aligned with some of the principles that I saw in just the very high level aspects of your recommendation. So we're very happy to support whatever comes out of that.
Thank you, Ms. Bowers. Thank you. We're going to go on
Thank
to
you.
Thank you, Ms. Young. We're going to go to the Bloc Québécois with Mr. Trudel, s'il vous plaît.
Oui, merci. Oui, merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you, Madam Chair. If we look at the first round, and coming back to the RHI, we had $4 billion of projects throughout Canada. The Canadian Federation of Municipalities was asking for $7 million in investment, and they were doing the reading that the funds allocated in this program is insufficient to face the needs. So at CMHC, are you going to ask the government to invest more in this program?
Thank you very much for the question. At CMHC, we are very committed to the addressing homelessness in Canada. We view this as something that is very important to address. We're very pleased to have been entrusted with delivering the first $1 billion of the Rapid Housing Initiative. We're very pleased again to receive an additional $1.5 billion given the need. And we're here to follow the direction of government and we're here to and prepared to make sure that whatever funds are made available to address homelessness, that we get this money out to the communities and the organizations who are serving homeless people on a day-to-day basis.
D'accord. Parlons maintenant.
Now let's talk about the next $1.5 billion and organizations that are waiting to find out. So what are the modalities? There are, well, most of the people who applied in round one were refused, and they were told, oh, well, let's see if there's new funds, and there are $1.5 billion. So the projects that have already been sent in, some people have said they invested thousands of dollars through CMHC programs in order to make an application, to prepare an application. So these people who've already applied before Christmas for round one, will they automatically be reconsidered for the $1.5 billion round two?
A short answer, Ms. Bowers, please.
Thank you very much. The final terms and conditions of the Rapid Housing Initiative version 2 are still being developed. As soon as we have clarity on that, we'll provide them to the public. And under all circumstances, we want to make sure that all proponents, that the application process is simple and that we reduce any rework or any additional administrative burdens.
Thank you. And merci, Monsieur Trudel. And now over to the NDP for 2.5 minutes, Madame Gazan, Ms. Gazan.
Thank you so much, Chair. Madame Bowers, it's abundantly clear, it's becoming clear that housing is no longer something that serves as a shelter and home for Canadians, but an asset for investors on Bay Street. And this has happened and continues to happen at the expense of people, especially low-wage workers and racialized individuals who, as you've indicated, see a greater proportion of their disposable income go towards housing, sometimes up to 75%, something that's actually very common in my riding. At the CMHC, we need leadership to correct this trend, to ensure that housing is a basic right that all Canadians can enjoy without taking on absurd levels of debt. Are you committed to restoring housing as a basic human right? And if so, how?
Thank you very much for that question, Madam Chair. As you know, an essential aspect of the National Housing Strategy is the National Housing Strategy Act, which makes the commitment that Canada views the housing as a right, and we are working towards the progressive realization of that right. In the last year, we saw the establishment of the National Housing Council. I was very pleased to participate in that council as part of one of my first meetings when I became the CEO. And I think the process is underway to appoint the National Housing Advocate, which is also a key component of looking at housing as a right. When you look at the National Housing Strategy programs, which are diverse in nature, you will see that there is a focus on the most vulnerable in our society. We do have programs like the RCFI, but that is more of an exception. The vast majority of the programs under the National Housing Strategy focus on the most vulnerable. And CMHC, we're committed to work especially with Canadians who are not well served by the private market. And we make every effort to make sure that every dollar of investment for Canadians who are made most vulnerable have the most positive impact.
I asked that question because I understand, for example, that CMHC provides mortgage loan insurance to private lenders such as commercial banks.
Our time is up. My apologies.
Thank you.
So we will go back. We will go to back to the Conservatives for 5 minutes. Mr. Viss.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd just like to go back to the point I raised at the end last time and the motion I moved, and I believed I was in order because you are able to move a motion on the floor related to the subject matter at hand. So I'd like that motion to stand, and I'd like to have a recorded vote.
Okay, Mr. Viss, I believe that myself and the clerk thought that you had presented the motion rather than moving. So my mistake, my apologies. So you have moved the motion. It is in order. We have received it all in our inbox. It has been translated. So you're calling for a recorded vote. Is that correct?
Correct.
Thank you. Mr. Vaughn.
Yeah, I have a bit of a concern with the motion as presented. It asks for detailed listings of all of the applications, including the addresses and the price points that have been quoted as part of the application process. This would put in jeopardy every single one of the applications, as they are all now currently on hold waiting for the new dollars to arrive. And if we simply produced a list of 700 assets across this country with price points and disclose that information, as well as the municipal address and disclose that information, we'd be effectively putting out a shopping list to competitive bids that would undermine the integrity of the program, but also would put at risk any one of these projects from being realized in real time. The reason the property information is redacted is to protect the proprietary interests of both the vendor and the seller. And the way that this motion has been drafted is incredibly irresponsible, and as I said, would violate the trust that many of the applicants and many of the vendors have invested into this process, and would put put it, as I said, at jeopardy us being able to even hopefully recognize some of these projects as being viable. So I would ask that the committee defeat this motion. I think what he's looking for is a list of applicants, not the details of the financial information. If Mr. Viss could redraft the motion, I think we could find a way to support it. But as it's currently drafted right now, it would blow this whole process right out of the water and destroy the opportunities for housing providers from coast to coast to coast to realize these projects.
Thank you, Mr. Vaughn. Ms. Falk.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think what's frustrating is when there are order paper questions asked by the opposition, we see a lot of documents come back redacted. If there wasn't a trend on this, maybe there would be a little bit more trust there, but the opposition is just doing their job of holding the government to account. So I would hope that we would vote for this so that we could get the information that Mr. Viss requested in the first place. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Falk. Mr. Viss.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The purpose of my motion today and what I'm looking for is transparency. Now, I'm open to a friendly amendment to take away some of the information on pricing, but I believe that Canadians have a right to know the list of projects. And I'm not asking for a lot here. I'm asking for information about who applied, who was accepted, and who was rejected. And the basis behind that is because one of the applications from my riding in the Statliam Nation was rejected. And I don't think they received adequate information. And the second reason is referring to my earlier testimony with the Mayor of Burnaby and Chair of the Metro Vancouver Housing, who indicated that despite Burnaby being one of the least affordable places in Canada, they received no money for shovel-ready projects in that community. So I'm prepared to hear a friendly amendment from Mr. Vaughn to take away maybe the price point of that information to make sure that we can stay within the bounds of privacy. But ultimately, I'm just asking for which projects were accepted and rejected, and I'm not asking for the world here. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Viss. And I believe Ms. Gazan was next. Please correct me if I'm wrong.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I don't seem to have a copy of the motion in my mailbox. So,
okay,
thank you.
We can ensure that gets to you. I believe the clerk can make that happen. I believe Madame Chabot was next.
Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is quite the meeting for you today. Now, on this motion that was unexpected, and that has been tabled by my colleague, Mr. Viss, I am sensitive to the arguments linked to transparency. Who is not for transparency? That means to have the maximum amount of information possible. I don't know if you've had bad experiences with regards to other requests in other committees. But at the same time, I am also quite aware of issues linked to contracts, of financial considerations, and questions linked to confidentiality. If the objective is to find out in a certain riding or in a territory what projects were refused or accepted, I think that this probably merits an amendment as it is written here. I have to say that there are some information here that could not be necessary, but especially might contravene security issues.
Thank you, Madame Chabot. Mr. Tucker.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. And I'd just like to support Mr. Viss's motion on transparency of the warning process. And I do understand Adam's comment, and we don't want to sidetrack anything. And I think a friendly amendment from Adam on the motion would hopefully have the whole committee voting in favor of transparency where it doesn't hurt the overall project. So I'm look forward to hearing Adam's amendment, hopefully.
Thank you, Mr. Tucker. Mr. Vaughn.
I will also, and I was going to cover this in the question, that in the situation with Quebec, under the housing accord with Quebec, the Quebec government sets the criteria and chooses the projects, and we don't have that information as to what criteria they chose, which ridings they chose, which projects and which project applications they moved ahead with. So we're being asked for information that is not entirely within our jurisdiction, and we have to respect the decisions that the Quebec National Assembly and the Quebec government made. Additionally, on the amendment, it is a very long, complex request and a very detailed set of requests that have been put here. For example, when we put in place an application that comes from a particular housing application, is it the location of the proponent or the location of the housing when they ask for the riding? For example, in Winnipeg Centre, we had an application that was put forth the other day by a company in one riding for a project in a different riding. We announced it in the riding, and the MP in question wasn't invited to the announcement because we thought we were in a different riding at the time. So there's a lot more to this equation than simply just the information you're asking for. I understand the need to understand which projects got funding, which ones didn't, and why. But it's more complex than just the federal government or just the CMHC making these decisions. And I will go back to the point I raised earlier. I'm not going to fix this motion. The proponent can fix their own motion, but they are asking for us to disclose confidential information, proprietary information, detailed financial transactions in a public way to a public body that would literally blow up the process that is currently underway and would violate, I would suggest, the good faith that both vendors and proprietors have put forth these applications. They were never told they were going to disclose their financial information, never disclose which properties they were trying to acquire, and never had to disclose the dollar amounts that they are proposed to put on the table, nor the funding sources for those dollar amounts, which are all part of this calculation. I would suggest that the member withdraw the motion, come back with a clearer motion. I'd be happy to work with him to get the information he wants, but the way this is drafted puts at risk everything in Rapid Housing 2.0 and every single one of the projects that's currently on hold awaiting new funding, which is now being delivered by the Budget Implementation Act as well as the budget. This is a really serious overreach on behalf of this motion. I understand the intent and support the intent in principle, but in practice and in detail, this will literally take projects out of the hands of nonprofit providers and hand them over to somebody else. And who knows what the consequences of that will be, and who knows what the consequences will be of people that have purchase offers that will then expire as a result of this information being disclosed, and what legal remedies may be available to those individuals as they have invested dollars in trying to acquire these properties, only to see a committee of the House of Commons disclose all of the business dealings prematurely and therefore put at risk their security deposits. So there's a lot more implications to what Mr. is asking for than is currently in this motion. And I would ask everyone to take a step back, focus the amendment, focus the request more properly, and deal with it in a responsible way, and not put at risk the transactions that are on hold right now awaiting future funding.
Thank you, Mr. Vaughn. Mr. Manley. And welcome to
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't have a vote on this committee, but I would just like to support what Mr. Vaughn has said, because I know in my riding, the city of Nanaimo has deals going on with BC Housing for properties that cannot be disclosed. This is proprietary information, and it would cause serious damage to the projects that are being proposed and that have gone forward with their application. I love transparency. I want to see money flowing. We didn't get money in Nanaimo Ladysmith for the Rapid Housing Initiative. There was a couple of really good projects that were proposed, and the proponents are waiting for the next round to come, but they cannot have this information that is part of their application disclosed. It would just create havoc, and it will actually sink those projects. So I would agree with Mr. Vaughn, and I hope that the rest of the committee does as well and doesn't support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Manley, and again, welcome to HUMA. Great to be joining us, Ms. Falk.
Thank you, Matt.
Sorry, and then Mr. Viss, go ahead. Sorry, I mixed up the order.
Mr. Vaughn can wordsmith all he likes, and as I suggested, I would be open to a friendly amendment on excluding proprietary information. But when I receive redacted documents from the government, when this government promised to Canadians to outline everything on March 31st, which they did not do, And then to say I'm being irresponsible as a parliamentarian when I'm given a bunch of black pages from the government of Canada to get transparency and to make it seem that I'm the irresponsible one for fighting so Mr. Vaughan, the parliamentary secretary, is accountable to Canadians on the decisions of the government is misleading to all of the members here. I am open to a friendly amendment, and I'll table one right now that maybe that the lawyers through the HUMA committee exclude proprietary information, but list the project names that were approved and rejected to this committee. That's all I'm after, is what projects were rejected and which ones were approved. He could have given that to me in the order paper questions, but Mr. Vaughan and his department decided to give us zero information. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Viss. Ms. Falk.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just need to comment on the bullying language that I felt Mr. Vaughan was exhibiting. What's very frustrating for me is this is a government that has been ridden with scandal and cover-ups and redactions. Like I said earlier, this has been a trend since the previous parliament where we've seen pages just blacked out, sometimes with no letters on them whatsoever. And so our job, especially as opposition and Her Majesty's loyal opposition, is to hold this government accountable. And we owe it to the people who have sent us here, who are Canadians. And so I don't appreciate that we are being threatened, that projects could be, everything could just implode, especially to Mr. Viss's point that he got nothing when he asked these order paper questions. Even if there was a little bit there that was given, would be better than what this is. So again, just on the track record of this government with scandals and cover-ups, I don't think I would be in a position to vote against this for the sake of transparency. If the government is not hiding anything, I would, and Mr. Vaughan is true to his words, I would assume that he would make an amendment that would be plausible to the government to show and reveal the answers to Mr. Viss's questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Falk. I just want to confirm, Mr. Viss, I'm sorry, did you put forward an amendment? I may have missed that. I apologize.
I would be out of order. I can't put forward an amendment to my own motion, so I'll ask hopefully one of my colleagues to move that.
Okay, my apologies. I just want to confirm. Back to the speaking order. Madame Chabot, s'il vous plaît.
Je ne serai pas le collègue.
Madam Dancho, I won't be the one who will do that, but I would like to speak because I have the impression, and this is an impression that I have, I think what Mr. Viss is trying to obtain is impossible to obtain. Even the Access to Information Act wouldn't allow us to have this type of sensitive information. So what are we exactly seeking to obtain? Well, I think the wise thing to do as a committee and to be able to end in the next 15 minutes, I don't know if we can reformulate this motion according to the rules and debate at a later date. If we have to debate the motion as it is written, I will have to vote against this motion, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Madame Chabot. Ms. Gazan, please.
Thank you so much. And, you know, I hear the frustration in my colleague, Mr. Vissa's voice, and I feel frustrated most days. So I just want to say I appreciate your frustration. In saying that, I think even in listening to the presentation today from Madame Bowers, there were certain considerations for projects. There's different ways, the way in all fairness to Mr. Vaughan, in the way that decisions are made in terms of funding allocations throughout the country. So I think that factors in. I would have to vote against it simply because I just don't have the information. I haven't had a chance to, for example, look over order paper questions 244, 350, 420. So I don't even know what I would be voting on in favor of against. And I'm going to propose that we table this for next meeting. You know, that will give us all a chance to do some research. I certainly have some research with what's been brought up in committee so that I can vote in good conscience either for or against. But right now my vote is certainly against because I just don't have the information to vote properly.
Thank you, Ms. Kazan. Mr. Viss.
Yes, thank you, Madame Gazan. I will note that I had those order paper questions distributed to all committee members in both official languages a number of weeks ago already, so they should be in your inbox. And you know what, I didn't actually expect our committee to be disrupted this way, but I really am trying to get answers on the Rapid Housing Initiative. And when I get black pages from the government, that doesn't sit well with me as a parliamentarian who's responsible for fighting on behalf of my constituents, many of whom are Indigenous and many of whom were upset with this program and the approach. And then furthermore, when I'm hearing from people like the Mayor of Burnaby, Chair of the Metro Vancouver Housing Committee, that there's some big problems, I have a responsibility to push for more information. Sunshine is always the best medicine. I think there's an easy way around this with noting Mr. Vaughan's concerns about proprietary information. I understand that, and that's why I was open to a friendly amendment, but he doesn't want to be accountable in a way that exposes his decision-making to the people of Canada, and I understand that. So that's the last comment I'm going to make on this today. But really, I didn't think it would get to this today, but my point is that transparency is always better than black pages. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Viss. Mr. Tucker.
Yes, Madam Chair, I'd like to make the following amendment to the motion that the CMHC provide the committee with the complete and unredacted versions of the order paper questions Q 244, Q 350, and Q 420 within 10 business days. The amendment would carry on with the exception of the confidential monetary figures and priority information that could inhibit current and future projects. I am working on a translation right now that will be forwarded out to the members.
Thank you, Mr. Tucker. I will just defer to the clerk. Is the amendment in order, Madam Clerk?
I would like to see that in writing first.
Thank you, Mr. Tucker.
I'll send it right now.
Thank you. Is there any discussion on the amendment while we wait for that, or? Doesn't look like there is. Okay. Madam Clerk, Mr. Turnbull?
I really need to see it in writing in order to be able to read it and reflect on it.
Okay, thank you. Yes, I think I'm just getting a note. We have to wait until it's received. And Madam Clerk, if you can just let us know. So why don't we suspend for a minute, just while you receive it, Madam Clerk, if that's in order. I see you nodding. Okay, so we will suspend for 1 minute.
I wasn't aware of this motion before today, and I think it's very telling on the reaction of the government on of this motion that there's something there. There's a reason why they don't want to release this information, and I think the sooner that we move on this motion, the better the country is. If we find out which projects were approved and which ones were declined, I think it's a fundamental part of the transparency that is lacking of late in Ottawa and in our country, and I look forward to hopefully having the vote here shortly.
All right, if there are no other comments on the amendment, I believe we have to, please, Madam Clerk, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe we have to vote on the amendment. I will call the vote or the question, please.
Madam Chair, have we all, sorry, point of order.
Go ahead, Mr. Turnbull.
Have we all received a copy of that? Because I don't have a copy.
It has just been sent to all the members.
I just received it. Do you want to just give it a minute and then take a look and then we can vote then?
Yeah, I mean, it would be really great to have a minute to actually look at it before we vote, because I need to know what I'm voting on. That's okay.
All right, we will take a minute.
Madam Chair, another
Yes,
point
Mr.
of order.
Turnbull.
May
Go
I
ahead.
request, just in view of having this not been put on notice in advance, may we have just a couple more minutes of suspension to confer with our team, just to review this? I think that would be something that's pretty standard practice within, I think, within our normal proceedings of a committee.
We can take perhaps 2 minutes suspend, just because we are coming up at the end. We will need to do the vote before we hopefully, well, I think the procedure we'd have to vote on it since it's been called. So a 2-minute suspension to confer with your colleagues beginning now. Madam Clerk, I think that's.
And the vote is
Where
on
you
the
go.
amendment of Mr. Dong, Mr. Tucker. Mr. Dong,
No.
Mr. Long,
No.
Mr. Turnbull,
No.
Mr. Vaughn,
No.
Mrs. Young,
No.
Mrs. Falk,
Yes.
Mr. Tucker,
Yes.
Mr. Viss,
Yes.
Madame Chabot, Madame Chabot,
Ce sera pas long. Oui, madame, désolée, je n'étais pas là. Est-ce qu'on appelle au vote, là?
oui, c'est votre tour maintenant. Pour l'amendement,
Oui, j'aimerais faire une remarque. Oui,
I would like to make a comment. I'm going to abstain.
No.
three yeas, 6 nays.
Okay, thank you, Madam Clerk. And I know we are running out of time here. So since the amendment's been defeated, I believe we just go back to debating the original motion, or we can call the vote on that as well. But if you could just give me a little direction here.
Let's call the vote.
Call the vote. Thank you, Mr. Vaughn. So I'll call the vote on the motion. I see thumbs up from Brad. Okay. So I call the vote. Thank you.
And the vote is on the motion of Mr. Viss. Mr. Dong.
Correct.
No.
Mr. Long.
No.
Mr. Turnbull.
No.
Mr. Vaughn.
No.
Mrs. Young.
No.
Mrs. Falk.
Yes.
Mr. Tucker.
Yes, for us acting like opposition parties.
Mr. Viss.
Yes.
Madame Chabot.
non.
Ms. Gazan.
No, because I didn't have a chance to review all the information as I requested to leave it till the next meeting. So I have to vote no.
3 yeas, 7 nays.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So we'll move on. And thank you, Ms. Bowers, for your patience and your intelligent remarks today. I know we are just running out of time here. So with our remaining minute, I believe, Mr. Viss, it was your round. So please proceed. Actually, we are out of time now. So it is officially the end. So unless there is a consensus to continue, I assume there's a consensus to adjourn, but just looking around
Point
to
of order.
see if, please, Mr. Vaughn.
You know, the practice of this committee has been to apportion time equally in questioning, and seeing as we have not achieved that yet, I would ask that the chair allow Mr. Viss to continue his final minute, and then the next liberal be given their turn, and that would apportion it equally in a way that would be fair to all participants.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Vaughn. He actually had 5 minutes and he only had about less than 1 minute that was taken up. So you have 4. But again, I'm not sure of the availability of Ms. Bowers or others, but if everyone is fine to just finish off those 2 rounds, we can absolutely jump right into that. So I guess Ms. Bowers, are you available for another 9 minutes?
Yes, of course. Very happy to be here.
Thank you. Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Viss, please, for 4 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And again,
pardon me, sorry. I will restart it.
For 1
he had
minute.
5 and he only used about 1, Mr. Vaughn. All right. So
sorry,
4 minutes.
I have 4 minutes remaining.
That's correct. Approximately, probably a little more, but go ahead.
Well, just furthermore, Madam Bowers, on the RHI, CMHC did not meet its promised deadline of March 31st. Could you provide I'm not even going to ask that question anymore. Please explain how CMHC came to predict a 9 to 18% decline in home prices early on in this pandemic.
Thank you very much for that question, Madam Chair. When that prediction was made, we were in, I think it was about the April-May period during the very early days of the pandemic, when there were very deep uncertainties about the future of the economy and also the role of government supports in providing mitigation of some of the very adverse economic impact. So it was a very extreme scenario that was predicted based on the facts at the time. As we have learned, the impact of the pandemic has not been as severely as we initially thought. And I think—
Why did CMHC hold that prediction through the fall, though? When we saw the rapid increase in prices across Canada.
So we customarily, we update those outlooks on a yearly basis. So there was a gap between when those predictions were made and when the updates were made. Looking forward and learning from this pandemic, I recognize that in exceptional circumstances like the pandemic, we should put in place measures to make sure that those kind of predictions are assessed. So I think I take that point. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm just going to return to some of your initial comments in the beginning too. This week I had the opportunity to celebrate a project in my riding with Habitat for Humanity, and Habitat for Humanity outlined again that home ownership leads to better socioeconomic outcomes for all people in Canada. And you mentioned racialized communities as well, and your Asian heritage, and how racialized Canadians in some cases don't have the same access to home ownership as other groups in Canada. This morning we had a family friend come over who was just scared, frankly, for her young daughter who's graduating university. She's in pharmacy, and she lives in the Vancouver area, and she has no hope of owning a home with the current prices right now. What advice would you give to a young person facing those types of barriers?
Thank you very much for that question, Madam Chair. As I mentioned in my remarks, I do think that escalating house prices is a serious issue for Canadians. I was very happy to see that there were some recent actions taken by OSFI and the Department of Finance to take steps so that people would not be taking on excessive debt when house prices are so escalated, because I view that as being something very serious for the stability of the housing finance system. As I mentioned in my earlier—
One other quick point. What do you think is the largest determinant leading to price increases in Canada?
Lack of supply.
Thank you. I think that's all I need to ask today, Madam Chair. Again, Madam Bowers, congratulations on your appointment.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Viss. And so for the last round, we'll go to Liberals for 5 minutes, and I have Mr. Vaughan on the list.
A couple of points to clear up the situation in Burnaby. My understanding is that there are 5 complete applications in and 2 pending. Those applications came in this year, 2020. Is that not right?
That's correct.
So no applications were made between 2016 and 2020 in terms of accessing the funds. If you don't make an application, we can't fund a project. Is that right?
That is correct, Mr. Vaughan.
And of the 5, we are working with BC Housing to realize them currently?
That's correct, Madam Chair. The reason why we have not been able to approve the applications is it's a co-investment program. So we're waiting for some decisions to be made by the BC Housing. And we hope those decisions will be forthcoming, in which case we can make a determination with respect to the Burnaby projects.
And the situation in Quebec, one of the reasons the slowness was encountered was we had to negotiate a special pathway forward for rapid housing in Quebec in order to directly fund cities. It's the first time we've ever done it in Quebec, but that caused a delay in terms of executing the project, because until the project money and the city money was allocated, we couldn't spend it in Quebec without an agreement with the Quebec government, and to proceed unilaterally would leave Quebec out of the mix. Is that not also true?
That's correct, Madam Chair. There's special circumstances in Quebec that create some complexity in terms of providing federal monies to municipalities. So that was a challenge for us that I think we successfully overcame.
And in terms of offshore ownership, in the city of Toronto, for example, 81% of the new housing starts are condominiums, and close to 9% of those condominiums are bought by offshore investors. If 9% of the housing stock was returned to Canadians and offshore dollars were pulled out of that market, would pulling 9% of the purchasers out of the market not also create supply for Canadians?
We think that addressing foreign ownership can be part of the problem, but as I pointed out earlier, I think we need to focus on creating even more supply for Canadians. So we should not be relying solely on things like a foreign ownership tax.
But in the last 10 years, 161,000 condominiums, almost most in my riding. That's why I got cut in half last time. But if we pulled 9% of the offshore ownership and the vacant homes out of that mix and returned those offers to Canadians, would not a boost of 10 almost 9% of supply have an impact on prices for Canadians? And would, if they had more housing options, would that not also align with the goal of increasing supply?
Yes, I would agree with that. I would just like to provide a little bit of granularity regarding the foreign ownership. And it is an issue when there is foreign ownership and the units remain vacant. But there are situations when there is foreign ownership, but it's actually rented out. So there is a bit of a distinction. But I take your point, Mr. Vaughan. Thank you.
And there are additional measures around Airbnb, for example, where there's a condominium in my riding where 72 units out of 310 are owned by one particular individual who rents them as Airbnbs and doesn't allow them to go into the housing market either to be rented or owned. And so additional regulatory measures around limiting that particular form of ownership would also return housing stock to the market and give Canadians choices. Is that not also true?
That is true. CMHC would be supportive of assessments of the impact of Airbnb in certain markets, and I think this is a municipal issue, but I think that has been successful in some foreign jurisdictions. So it's something that Canada should definitely look into.
And the recent infrastructure agreement that was negotiated with the province of Ontario, my understanding is the province of Ontario refused to do things like increase supply of affordable housing around transit-related projects, but it's a characteristic of our CMHC programs that we prioritize those projects which are being built around existing infrastructure to reduce the burden of providing supply in terms of making sure we supply where people are trying to live, where people do live, and where people have existing infrastructure to tap into. That's one of the ways in which we prioritize and increase supply in highly competitive housing markets.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm not familiar with the particular Toronto, Ontario transaction that you're referring to, but CMHC is supported in all our programs of creating more density in cities, and we feel that greater density around transit nodes is very supportive of our housing affordability goals, and it also aligns with our green change agenda.
And on the issue of process and supply and clearing red tape, the City of Calgary, for example, now has a 60-day turnaround on social housing application permits. We now calculate as part of a contribution agreement, when cities step up and reduce the processing time, we count that as a contribution to the project in real dollars as part of the way in which we factor in approvals. In other words, when the red tape is cut, they actually move to the front of the line quicker. Is that not true? And it's also included as a cash contribution towards the realization of the projects.
Brief answer, Ms. Bowers, please.
Thank you very much. CMHC would support any measure that prevents bureaucracy from preventing the creation of affordable housing.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Bowers, for joining us today. Greatly appreciate your time. And
just a point of order.
Please, Mr. Vaughan.
Just to correct the record, I don't redact statements that are sent out from a Crown corporation to order paper questions. And the impression that was left with several statements here today was that I was doing the redacting of statements and the redacting of documents. I just want the record to be clear and accurate to have that idea hanging in the air is a little unfair to both myself and all other parliamentarians who don't do the redacting.
Thank you, Mr. Vaughan, for your clarification. If there is nothing else, do committee members agree to adjourn? Is there consensus to adjourn? Okay, thank you very much. And again, Ms. Bowers, thank you very much and congratulations on your new position.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Take care, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.